Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I used to work the night shift at a small gas station tucked into a forgotten stretch of highway just outside Hollow Creek, Tennessee. If you blinked, you'd miss it. One lone building, battered pumps, and a flickering sign that hadn't lit up right since the early 2000s. Back then, it felt like a nothing job, the kind people took when they needed to pay off bills or disappear for a while. For me, it was both. I'd moved out there 2 years ago after dropping out of community college, dragging a suitcase in a trail of bad decisions. My cousin Daryl ran the place, and he didn't ask questions, just handed me the keys and said, "Keep the drawer balanced, don't fall asleep on the job. And if someone pulls a knife, just give them the cash." The store itself had a strange layout, a main floor with snacks, smokes, and a couple of fridges humming against the back wall. There was one camera over the counter and one more pointing at the basement stairs, which was where we kept excess stock. No employee bathroom, just an outhouse around back. The basement always creeped me out. It wasn't finished, just poured concrete and exposed beams, and it smelled like mold and motor oil. It had those old metal shelves that rattled when you walked past them, even if you were careful. I never liked going down there, especially not at night. But that night, I didn't have a choice. It was early February, cold enough that even the rats probably thought twice before crawling out of wherever they lived. Business had been dead all evening. One guy buying scratch-offs, another topping off a rusted-out pickup and ranting about how the government was controlling birds. Same old. Around 11 p.m., I noticed we were almost out of Ridgefield BBQ chips, a favorite among our late-night crowd. I sighed, grabbed the basement key, and muttered, "One day, Daryl, you're gonna spring for a normal storage room." Halfway down the stairs, I heard it, a metallic clatter like something falling and rolling. Then footsteps, deliberate human footsteps, coming closer. I froze. The air turned icy. I backed up slowly until I reached the stairs, turned to run, and something moved in the corner of my eye. I bolted, slamming the door shut behind me. When I checked the security monitor, my stomach dropped. There he was, standing at the bottom of the basement stairs, looking straight into the camera, smiling. He looked ordinary, clean clothes, maybe mid-30s, but his eyes were hollow and that smile, wrong. I called Daryl. "There's a guy in the basement." Pause. "What guy?" "Some dude. He's just standing there, smiling at the damn camera." Daryl's voice tightened. "Lock the front door." "Don't go back down, I'm coming." When he arrived 12 minutes later, shotgun in hand, we went down together. Nothing. No man, no footprints, nothing moved. "Maybe it was a camera glitch," Daryl offered. "Don't insult me," I snapped. The next night, I checked the footage. From 11:09 to 11:014, static. Then the man was gone. A week later, another worker, Lexi, said the basement door was open when she arrived. Light on. 2 days after that, I found a note taped inside the counter. "You came close." The security footage had a 3-minute gap that night. Someone had turned the camera toward the ceiling. Later, we found deep scratches, from the inside, on the basement door. Sheriff said, "Probably kids." I didn't buy it. When I asked Daryl why he didn't want cops the first time, he avoided my eyes. "I just thought maybe it was someone I knew, from back when my uncle owned the place." A retired worker told me later. "A man once went missing there, last seen going into the basement with Daryl's uncle. He never came back up. That owner died 10 years ago. Heart attack. I quit the next day and left Hollow Creek for good. But sometimes when I dream, I still see him, standing at the bottom of those stairs, smiling, waiting." I used to believe bad things only happened to people who went looking for trouble. You know, the kind who took detours down unmarked roads or ignored the little voice that told them turn back. But I learned the hard way that sometimes trouble finds you anyway. It was March of last year during spring break. I had just spent a week visiting my aunt and uncle in Maple Hollow, Pennsylvania, a quiet postcard kind of town where time seemed to move slower. My cousin Mattie was getting married that summer, and it had been one of those rare family trips where everything felt easy. Hikes in the woods, late-night movies, too much homemade banana bread. I was 20, tired, and ready to get back to college in Birmingham, Alabama. It was supposed to be a simple drive. The plan: leave early, stop for coffee in Harrisburg, maybe crash at my friend Ryan's place in Winston-Salem for a nap, and finish the drive before dawn. Easy. Milo, my 95-pound golden doodle mix, sat in the back seat like he owned the car. He wasn't much of a guard dog, too gentle for his own good, but he always made the long miles feel less lonely. By the time I hit Southern Virginia, it was close to 1 a.m. The road stretched out in front of me, long, black, and empty. No exits, no streetlights, just trees pressing in from both sides like an endless wall. Then the gas light blinked on. "All right, buddy," I said, glancing in the rearview mirror. "Looks like we're stopping sooner than planned." About 5 minutes later, a green highway sign appeared in my headlights. Idle Creek, 1 mile. Never heard of it. Didn't matter. I needed gas. The exit ramp curved into darkness, leading to a narrow, cracked road that hadn't seen maintenance in years. After a minute or so, the trees broke open, and there it was, a small gas station sitting alone under a flickering canopy light. 2 old pumps, a dusty convenience store, a half-dead neon sign that read, "Gas, diesel, ice." There were no cars, no sound, just the faint hum of the light above Pump 2 and the buzzing of crickets. Still, the pumps were on. That was all that mattered. I pulled in, killed the engine, and stepped out into the cool night air. Milo lifted his head from the back seat, watching me with half-open eyes. "Just a quick stop, boy," I said. That's when I noticed the building behind the gas station. It wasn't part of the main store, just a small windowless shack set about 50 feet away at the tree line. A single yellow bulb glowed over its door, faint but steady. I remember thinking, why the hell would anyone need a separate building way out here? Milo started growling. It wasn't loud, but it made my blood run cold. I'd had that dog since he was a puppy, and I'd never heard him growl at anything before, not even thunder. "Easy," I murmured, petting his head. "Just tired." I swiped my card and started pumping gas. The sound of fuel rushing into the tank was the only thing breaking the silence. Then behind me I heard it, the low rumble of engines. Plural. 2 dark SUVs and a white cargo van rolled slowly into the lot from the road behind me, headlights off. My stomach knotted. They didn't pull up to the pumps. They parked in a semicircle near the shack. Doors opened. Men stepped out. 10, maybe more. None of them said a word, just stretched, cracked their necks, and started moving around like they'd been there 100 times before. One of them had a walkie-talkie clipped to his belt. Another had something bulky under his coat that looked a lot like a gun. I froze, the gas nozzle still in my hand. Milo was sitting upright now, teeth bared, eyes locked on the shack. The men didn't even glance my way, not at first. Then one of them, tall and clean-shaven with dark hair, turned his head and looked straight at me. And he smiled. Not friendly, not curious. The kind of smile that says you shouldn't be here. That was all I needed. I shoved the nozzle back into the pump, jumped into the driver's seat, and hit the locks. My heart was hammering so hard it hurt. "Milo, hang on." I turned the key, the engine roared. The man's smile widened as I backed out. None of them moved to stop me, but their eyes followed. Then, one by one, they began walking toward the shack and disappearing behind it. No flashlights, no noise, just swallowed by the dark. All except the smiling man. He stayed by the SUV, watching me leave. I didn't look back again until I was 10 miles down the road. When I finally saw a 24-hour diner glowing like a lighthouse in the distance, I pulled in and parked. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely take the keys out of the ignition. Inside, the place smelled like coffee and fried eggs. A tired-looking waitress brought me a cup and asked if I was okay. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired." I sat there for an hour watching the door, unable to shake the image of that shack and those silent men slipping into the woods. 3 weeks later, I was back at school. Birmingham felt safe. Busy streets, noise, light. Then I saw the headline, "Human Remains Found in Abandoned Building Near Idle Creek, Virginia." The photo was grainy, but my stomach dropped the moment I saw it. That shack. Police had found 5 bodies buried in shallow pits beneath the floor. All men, none identified. And the report said the gas station had been closed for years. Years. That meant the pumps hadn't been working. That meant the light above pump 2 shouldn't have been on. That meant I had stopped at a place that didn't exist anymore. I don't know what I stumbled into that night. A deal, a meeting, something darker. But I know this. If Milo hadn't growled when he did, if I had taken a few seconds longer to leave, if I hadn't trusted that gut feeling, I might have ended up under that shack too. Now I don't drive at night anymore. I keep a satellite phone in my glove box, pepper spray on my keychain, and enough gas to skip every small town stop between states. Because some places aren't just abandoned. They're bait, waiting for the next person who doesn't listen to the fear creeping up their spine. It started with instinct. That deep animal sense that something isn't right even when nothing looks wrong. Most people ignore it. Emma didn't, but by the time she listened, it was almost too late. It was close to midnight when Emma and her boyfriend Ryan left Blue Peak Amusement Park, a lesser-known theme park in the mountains of northern Georgia. They'd spent the entire weekend there for her birthday. Roller coasters, sunburn, greasy food, and laughter that carried into the night. It had been one of the few weekends lately where everything felt normal. They were tired, sun-dazed, but happy. Ryan's black 2010 Nissan 370Z hummed quietly as they wound down the back roads, heading home to northeastern Georgia, 2 hours away. But halfway through the drive, the GPS voice broke the peace. Accident ahead. Rerouting. The main highway was closed. Ryan sighed but shrugged it off. Looks like a backroad adventure. Emma smiled, half asleep. Just don't get us lost. The reroute seemed fine at first. Smooth asphalt, wide turns, the occasional mailbox. But the farther they drove, the narrower the road became. Soon the pavement was cracked, the shoulders vanished, and the trees pressed in like dark curtains. The radio signal faded to static. Even the GPS stopped showing a route, just a pulsing blue dot floating in a sea of green nothing. Emma's phone said 12:47 a.m. She shifted uncomfortably. "Ryan, when was the last time we saw a gas station?" He glanced at the dashboard. "Don't know." "Why?" "Your fuel gauge still doesn't work, does it?" He grimaced. The gauge had been busted for months. He used the trip meter instead. It read 132.6 miles. "Shit," he muttered. "We should have filled up before we left." Emma frowned. "Can we make it?" "Probably. But I'll find the next stop just in case." After a minute of silence, her weak cell signal loaded a map. "There's a place called Creekside Phillips about 5 minutes away." Perfect. But when they turned onto the narrow downhill road leading to it, everything changed. The trees leaned over the road like a tunnel, swallowing the headlights. The air grew colder. At the bottom of the hill, a dim light flickered. It was the gas station, if you could call it that. The sign was half burned out. It read simply, Creekside. The station itself looked ancient. White paint peeling off wooden siding, cracked pavement, one buzzing light above the pumps. There were 2 old fuel dispensers, a dusty convenience store with the blinds drawn and nothing else. No cars, no people, no sound. Emma felt her stomach tighten. "Ryan, I don't like this place." "It's just old," he said. "We'll be quick." He pulled up beside the pump. The air outside felt colder than before, heavy like a fog that hadn't formed yet. Emma kept the doors locked as he stepped out. The pump handle screeched when he pulled it free, metal grinding on metal. She looked out her window down the empty road. There were no streetlights. The road seemed to end just beyond the station, a dead end swallowed by trees. Then her headlights caught movement. A white SUV was rolling slowly down the hill they'd come from. No headlights, no sound. It came to a stop about 50 feet behind them. "Ryan," Emma whispered, tapping the glass. He looked back. "What?" "That car. It's just sitting there." Ryan straightened, squinting into the rear view. "Weird." The SUV idled silently. Through the open driver's window, Emma could make out a shape. A man. She saw the orange glow of a cigarette. He wasn't moving. He was watching them. Emma's chest tightened. "Can we go, please?" "Just a second," Ryan said, but she saw his hands tremble slightly as he replaced the pump handle. The SUV suddenly rolled forward a few feet, then stopped again. Ryan muttered, "Okay, yeah, we're leaving." He jumped in, turned the key. The engine roared. As he shifted into gear, the SUV lunged forward, cutting across the entrance to the road, blocking them in. Emma screamed. Ryan slammed the brakes, reversed hard, tires screeching against cracked asphalt. He spun the car around, heading back the way they came, back up the winding road. The SUV's headlights flashed on, flooding them in blinding white. "He's following us!" Emma cried. "Hold on!" The car tore through the darkness, swerving around potholes, pine needles scattering behind them. But the SUV was fast, too fast. Its engine growled low, steady, closing the distance. Ryan's voice was tight. "There has to be another road. Look for something." Emma's eyes darted between shadows, branches whipping past. "There!" "Left." A narrow gravel path appeared on their left, almost invisible. Ryan jerked the wheel, fishtailing onto it, gravel spitting like gunfire. The SUV flew past, missing the turn. They both gasped in relief. Then headlights appeared ahead. Another vehicle. This one a black pickup truck parked across the gravel road like a barricade. Ryan slammed the brakes. "No, no, no." The pickup didn't move. A door opened. A tall man stepped out, wearing a dark flannel shirt, holding a crowbar. From behind them, the white SUV reappeared, its headlights blinding, sealing off the path. They were trapped. Emma's voice cracked. "Ryan, what do we do?" He didn't answer. He just threw the car into reverse, then yanked the wheel hard, crashing off the road and into the woods. Branches snapped. Leaves exploded across the windshield. The car bounced and groaned, scraping over roots until they burst into a small clearing. An old maintenance shed with a flickering light above it and a rusted vending machine leaning against the wall. Ryan stopped, panting. They both sat there, hearts hammering, staring into the dark. No headlights followed. No sound. After what felt like an hour, Emma whispered, "I think we lost them." Ryan nodded, gripping the wheel so tight his knuckles were white. They didn't move until their phones picked up a faint signal. Then they called 911. It took 45 minutes for deputies to reach them. The officer who arrived was older, calm. But when they explained what happened, his expression changed, hardened. "You said Creekside?" he asked. "Yeah," Ryan said. "Down some back road near Idle Creek, I think." The deputy exhaled slowly. "You're lucky. Locals know not to drive that stretch at night. It's been linked to robberies, drug operations, and some disappearances." Emma stared, her mouth dry. "Disappearances?" He nodded. "A couple of travelers went missing last year. Their car was found abandoned near that gas station." Ryan looked sick. "So what? Was that a setup?" "Most likely. Some of those places aren't gas stations anymore," the deputy said grimly. "They're traps." That night changed everything. Ryan sold his car 2 weeks later. Emma never drove back roads again. And sometimes, when she dreams, she still sees that white SUV parked under the buzzing light, a cigarette glowing in the dark, waiting for the next pair of headlights to appear over the hill. Because some gas stations aren't empty. They're hunts in progress. And when the sign flickers and the air turns cold, it's already too late. It started with the cold, not the kind that stings your fingers or fogs the glass, but the kind that sinks in. deep into your chest, your bones, your nerves. That's how Eli Turner described it later when he told the sheriff what happened on Route 46 the night he almost didn't make it home. It was December 3rd, 2021, a Thursday. Eli was on his way back from a late shift at the warehouse, a 2-hour drive through the rural edge of West Virginia where the hills rolled into fog and cell service faded to nothing. He was 27, tired and halfway through a lukewarm coffee when the gas light came on. "Damn it," he muttered, glancing at the gauge. He hadn't filled up earlier because the station near his job was packed. He figured he'd make it home before empty. He figured wrong. The GPS was useless out here. No bars, no signal, just static. But as the road curved along the valley, a faint glow appeared up ahead, pale yellow against the dark. Then a sign. Rusty, half-lit, swinging gently in the wind. Route 46 gas and service. The place sat alone at the bend, 2 cracked pumps, an old brick building with a faded red roof, and a single light buzzing above the door. It looked abandoned from a distance, but the pump still hummed faintly, and the open sign in the window flickered like it was trying to stay alive. Eli sighed in relief and pulled in. Snow flurries drifted across the lot. The pavement glistened with frost. He could see his own breath hanging in the air as he stepped out. The smell hit him first, not gasoline, but something metallic, sharp, almost like rusted blood. He hesitated, glanced at the convenience store. The windows were tinted, but a dim light glowed inside. A shadow moved across it, tall, slow. "Someone's here," he said under his breath, forcing a smile. "Good." He swiped his card, grabbed the pump, and started fueling up. That's when he noticed it. The numbers on the digital screen weren't changing. He looked closer. The pump wasn't running, but he could hear something filling the tank. A faint gurgle, like liquid being forced through a pipe. He pulled the handle back. The sound didn't stop. Then the light above him flickered twice and went out. The world dropped into silence. Eli turned, scanning the empty road, the surrounding woods. Snow was falling harder now, soft but steady. A faint scraping sound came from behind the store. He froze. It wasn't wind. It wasn't branches. It sounded like metal dragging against concrete. Then, footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from the back toward the side door. Eli set the pump handle back and stepped toward his car. He was halfway there when the side door of the building creaked open. A man stepped out, tall, pale, wearing a dark brown mechanic's jacket with a patch that said GUS. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Evening," the man said, voice low and gravelly. "Little late to be out, ain't it?" Eli forced a polite nod. "Yeah, just needed gas. The pump, it's acting up." The man didn't look at the pump. His gaze stayed fixed on Eli. Then he said slowly, "Come inside. We'll square it up." Eli hesitated. The man's hands were dirty, dark stains that didn't look like grease. "I'll just try again," Eli said, backing toward his car. The man tilted his head. Then he smiled wider, too wide. "Pump's been broken for years." Eli froze. "Then, why's it running?" The man took a step closer. "Ain't it funny how things work when they want to?" Something moved behind the mechanic. Another figure stepping into the doorway. Then another. And another. 3 men now, all wearing the same brown jackets, all silent. Eli turned, jumped into his car, and hit the locks. The key twisted. Engine roared. The men didn't move. They just watched, standing in a line, their faces barely visible in the dark. He reversed hard, spinning out on the icy pavement, then tore down Route 46, tires screaming against the frost. He didn't stop driving until he hit the main highway 30 minutes later, shaking so badly he could barely hold the wheel. He pulled into a Denny's off exit 89 and called the sheriff from there. 2 deputies drove out that same night to check. What they found didn't make sense. There was no gas station on Route 46, no building, no power lines. Just a patch of broken asphalt buried under snow. But when they brushed the snow aside near where the pumps should have been, they found fresh tire tracks and boot prints. leading straight into the woods. A week later, Eli tried to go back with the sheriff's office, but when they reached the same mile marker, the road was gone. The turnoff no longer existed. It was just dense forest. The county record showed no business ever registered under the name Route 46 Gas and Service. But an old newspaper clipping from 1978 surfaced a month later. It described a small rural gas station destroyed in a fire that killed 3 men inside, mechanics who'd been running an illegal salvage ring. The cause of the fire was never determined. Their names were listed at the bottom. One of them was August Gus Danner. Eli doesn't drive that route anymore. He moved to a city, sold his car, and takes the bus to work. He says he still dreams of that night sometimes. The buzz of the light, the smell of rust, the smile that didn't move. He always wakes up right before the side door opens. Because deep down, he knows something. He didn't escape a gas station. He escaped a place that shouldn't be there, a trap still waiting for the next desperate driver to run low on fuel. And somewhere on a cold back road no map remembers, the light above pump 2 flickers on again. You don't realize how long the night really is until you work through all of it, every second stretching thin until time itself feels wrong. That's what Mason Heller learned his first winter at Redwater Gas and Mart, a lonely 24-hour station 20 miles outside the town of Clark's Hollow, Kentucky. The place sat at the edge of Route 119, surrounded by black forest and swampland. You could drive 10 miles in either direction without seeing another light. Mason took the job because he needed it. Simple as that. He'd just dropped out of college, broke and desperate for cash. His cousin got him the night shift slot. Easiest gig ever, his cousin had said. Stock shelves, sell smokes, and don't fall asleep. Nothing ever happens out there that turned out to be a lie. It was Friday, January 7th, Mason's 3rd week on the job. The temperature outside was 19 degrees Fahrenheit, the air so dry it cracked your lips. The wind rattled the glass doors like a whisper trying to get in. He clocked in at 11:56 p.m., grabbed a stale coffee from the machine and did his usual routine. Checked the register, refilled the snack aisle, wiped the counter, and scanned through the security feeds on the monitor behind the counter. The station had 4 cameras, one facing the parking lot, one pointed at the pumps, one over aisle 2, and one showing the back hallway that led to the stockroom and employee restroom. Everything looked normal. At 1:12 a.m., a pair of headlights rolled into the lot, a silver sedan. Mason perked up. First customer in an hour. The car idled for a moment, then the driver got out. A woman in her 30s, pale, wearing a long coat and dark scarf. She didn't look up at the camera, didn't look around. Just walked slowly toward the store, one hand clutching her coat shut. When she stepped inside, the bell above the door gave its usual ding. "Evening," Mason said, trying to sound friendly. "Cold night, huh?" She didn't answer. Didn't even look at him. She walked straight to the far aisle, the one with the canned goods, and stopped. He watched her from the counter. Something about her posture was wrong. She was standing perfectly still, shoulders tight, head tilted downward like she was listening for something. After nearly a minute, she slowly lifted her head and looked directly at the ceiling camera. Then she smiled. Not wide, not forced. Just a faint, knowing smile, like she'd found something she'd been looking for. The hairs on Mason's neck stood up. "Ma'am, you okay?" he asked. She didn't respond. Instead, she walked calmly to the cooler section, opened the door, and stepped inside. Not into the cooler, inside. The glass door shut behind her, and she was gone. Mason blinked, thinking maybe she'd crouched behind a shelf. He walked over, opened the cooler door. Empty. Just rows of drinks, fogged glass, and the low hum of refrigeration. No footprints on the frost-covered floor. He checked the other side. The back of the cooler led to the stockroom, separated by a metal door that was always locked. Mason's hands started to shake. He checked the cameras again. The woman was standing in aisle 2 looking directly at the camera. But he was in aisle 2. He turned around. Nobody there. The feed flickered, cutting to static for half a second, then came back. Now the woman was standing behind the counter in the camera feed, right where he was sitting. But when he spun around again, the space was empty. That's when he heard it. A soft click from the back hallway. The stockroom door had opened. He grabbed his flashlight and radio. "Darren, you still on?" he said into the walkie, calling his manager. No answer, only static. He turned the corner, light beam cutting through the narrow hallway. The air back there was freezing, breath turning to mist. The stockroom door was open about an inch. Something wet dripped from the handle, thick and dark. "Hello?" Mason whispered. He pushed the door open. The light inside was flickering, swinging from a broken chain overhead. Boxes were toppled over, and the back door, the emergency exit, was standing wide open, letting in a curtain of snow. He stepped closer, heart thudding in his chest. That's when he saw the footprints. Bare footprints. Small, leading from the cooler door to the open exit. Outside in the snow he could see more, a trail leading away toward the woods, and beside them, a second set, larger, heavier. Something had followed her out. Mason backed away, grabbed the phone, and called 911. The line connected, but what came through wasn't the operator's voice. It was breathing, slow, deep, male. Then a low voice whispered, "You shouldn't watch the tapes." Click. The line went dead. When the sheriff arrived 40 minutes later, the station looked untouched. No footprints, no open doors, no damage. But the security footage told a different story. It showed the woman entering the store, the same as before. But this time, when she looked up at the ceiling camera, her reflection in the cooler glass didn't match her movements. And when she disappeared inside the cooler, the camera caught the back door of the store opening by itself, then static for 8 minutes. When the feed came back, the counter camera showed Mason standing alone, flashlight trembling, and a tall figure in the reflection of the front door watching him from outside. The timestamp read 2:06 a.m. Mason swore he never saw anyone. The sheriff said maybe it was a trick of light, a glitch in the footage. But Mason quit the next morning. Redwater Gas still stands on Route 119. Locals say the night shift is cursed, that anyone who works there alone sees her eventually. They call her the woman in the cooler. Some say she froze to death years ago when she got locked inside after hours. Others say she was never human to begin with, that she was bait. But everyone agrees on one thing. If you stop there after midnight and see a woman in a long, dark coat, don't look away from her reflection. Because if you do, she'll step out of it. I've been driving 18-wheelers for 20 years. I've seen the best and worst of America's highways. The truck stop diners, the thunderstorms in Texas, the dead-eyed hitchhikers in Arizona. But what happened on Route 191, somewhere between Gila Bend and Tucson, still keeps me from sleeping some nights. You might think I'm crazy. Hell, maybe I am. But I know what I saw. And if you ever find yourself running that stretch of desert after midnight, don't stop for gas. It started on a Wednesday night in July. Hotter than hell. The kind of heat that makes the air shimmer like it's alive. I'd left El Paso around 6 p.m., hauling refrigeration units bound for Tucson. It was an overnight run, simple enough. I had coffee in my thermos, good music, and a clear sky. Around 1:14 a.m., I realized I was running low on fuel. No big deal. I checked the GPS, next stop, a little place called Redwood Fuel and Mart 10 miles ahead. Sounded perfect. Sure enough, 10 miles later I saw it. A glowing sign in the distance, Redwood Fuel, flickering red and white against the desert dark. 2 old gas pumps. 1 dusty convenience store, no cars. I pulled in, killed the engine, and stepped out. The night was silent. No wind, no insects, not even the hum of power lines. Just stillness. The pump worked fine. Old-school analog numbers rolling as the tank filled. While it ran, I went inside to grab a drink. The bell over the door chimed when I entered. Inside, the place smelled like dust and motor oil. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A lone clerk stood behind the counter, tall, thin, middle-aged. His name tag said Vern. "Evenin'," he said without looking up from his newspaper. "Evenin'," I replied. "Diesel on pump 2. He nodded, scribbled something on a pad, and asked, "Long haul?" "Yeah, El Paso to Tucson." He made a low whistle. "You're the second driver I've seen tonight." I leaned on the counter. "Busy road?" He smiled without showing his teeth. "Not anymore." There was something about his voice that made me uneasy, like he was saying more than the words implied. I paid, grabbed a soda, and left. As I stepped outside, I noticed the moon looked strange, a pale, dull orange low over the horizon, the kind of color you see before a dust storm. I didn't think much of it, just another weird desert night. 20 miles down the road, the gas light flicked on again. That didn't make sense. I'd just filled the tank. I pulled over, checked the gauge, half empty already. Fuel line leak, maybe? But when I climbed out to look, the tank was bone dry, not even the smell of diesel. Confused and irritated, I climbed back into the cab, checked the GPS again. Nearest station, Redwood Fuel and Mart 10 miles ahead. Wait, wasn't that the same place? I laughed nervously. Must be another branch. Old stations reuse names sometimes. Sure enough, 10 miles later, I saw the same glowing sign, same flicker, same red and white neon. Redwood Fuel, 2 pumps, no cars, and Vern was still inside. I felt my scalp prickle. Maybe I'd looped back somehow, taken a wrong turn. But the road behind me had been straight as a bullet. Still, I needed gas. I filled up again. Inside, Vern looked up this time. "You're back quick." What? He smiled, folding his newspaper. "Couldn't stay away, huh?" I forced a laugh. "I think I might have missed a turn." "Yep," Vern said softly. "That happens sometimes out here." He handed me my change, his long fingers brushing mine, cold as a fish. I walked out fast, another 20 miles. Same thing, gaslight, same sign ahead, same station. Only now, something was different. The lights inside flickered slower and the sign buzzed louder, like it was straining for power. When I went inside, the air smelled wrong, like burnt plastic. Vern wasn't behind the counter anymore. Instead, there was a man in a trucker's cap sitting at the far end of the store, his back to me. His clothes were old, grease-stained. His shoulders didn't move. "Hey," I called. "You work here?" He didn't respond. I took a few steps closer, heart hammering. The man's head lolled to the side, and I saw that his eyes were gone, just black sockets. His mouth opened, a dry cracking sound, and a voice that wasn't his croaked, "You missed the turn again." I bolted. The next few hours are a blur. I drove, I didn't stop. The road was endless, the same stretch of cracked asphalt, mile markers repeating. Every so often I'd pass the same billboard, Redwood Fuel 10 miles ahead. The same owl perched on the same post, the same broken guardrail. At one point I passed my own truck, same plates, same dent in the bumper. The driver inside looked just like me, only his head was turned toward me, mouth hanging open in a silent scream. I lost time after that. When I came to, it was dawn. The truck was parked outside a Real Love's travel stop, my usual route checkpoint. Fuel tank full. Odometer unchanged. I asked the attendant if there was a place called Redwood Fuel nearby. She frowned. "No, sir. Not around here. Closest station is 40 miles back west. I drove the rest of the way to Tucson without stopping." When I checked the GPS history later, there was no record of any detours or stops. A few months later, I met another long-haul driver at a rest stop in Nevada. Old guy, gray beard, shaky hands. When I mentioned Route 191, his eyes went wide. "You saw it too," he whispered. "Redwood Fuel?" He nodded slowly. "I stopped there in '98. The clerk's name was Vern. He told me to stay off that road after dark. Said it wasn't the road that loops, it's us." He looked at me like he wanted to say more, but just muttered, "They only let you leave when they're done with you," and walked away. Sometimes when I'm driving long nights through the desert, I catch a flicker of red neon in my mirrors. Sometimes my fuel gauge drops for no reason. And sometimes I hear a soft voice on the CB radio whispering, "You missed the turn again." I've stopped running overnight routes now, because I know what's waiting out there. Somewhere between Gila Bend and Tucson, beyond the edge of any map, there's a gas station that doesn't exist, and it's always 10 miles ahead. My name's Evan, and I used to work the night shift at a gas station just off Highway 75, near the edge of a small Arizona town called Cedar Flats. If you blink while driving through, you'll miss it. One diner, one motel, and our little station. Barton's Gas and Go. When I started there, I thought it was just a crappy job, something to pay rent while I figured out college. But that place, it was never just a gas station. It was hungry. The first night was quiet. The hum of the fluorescent lights, the faint buzzing of the beer fridge, the occasional moth tapping the window. It felt peaceful. Lonely, but peaceful. My boss, Gary, had trained me for a week on day shifts. He warned me, "Lock the side door after 11, don't go behind the building. And if anyone comes in after 2 a.m. asking for directions to Route 6, don't help them. Just tell him you don't know." I laughed it off, thought it was some weird small-town superstition. He didn't laugh back. He just stared at me and said, "I'm serious, Evan. You don't want them sticking around the first few nights. We're normal." I stocked shelves, mopped the floor, killed time scrolling through my phone. Then the weird stuff started. It began small. The mirrors in the restroom fogging up even though the air was cold and dry. When I wiped them clean, I could swear the reflection was a few seconds behind. One night around 2:37 a.m., I caught a flicker in the corner of my eye. Someone moving down aisle 3. When I looked up, nobody was there. Then I noticed the security monitor behind the counter. The camera for aisle 3 showed a man standing still facing the snack shelves. He wore a dark jacket, jeans, and his head was tilted slightly like he was listening. I looked down the aisle again. Empty. Looked back at the screen. Still there. And then he turned his head slowly toward the camera. I froze. The next second, the monitor went black. I told Gary about it the next morning. He sighed, rubbed his temples, and said, "If you saw someone in the cameras, don't worry. Just don't look too long next time." That's all he said. I thought he was joking, but there was something in his tone, something like fear. A few nights later, around 3 a.m., a customer came in. He was tall, pale, wearing an old brown coat that looked older than he was. His voice was low, calm. "You know how to get to Route 6? I froze. Gary's warning flashed through my mind. I forced a shrug. "Sorry, man. Not from around here." He nodded slowly, eyes never blinking. Then he smiled, too wide. "You'll learn soon enough." He left without buying anything. When the door closed, I noticed footprints in the dust near the threshold. They were wet, like he'd stepped through water. But when I looked outside, the ground was bone dry. That night, the air smelled different, metallic like pennies and ozone. Around 3:30, the lights flickered and I heard knocking from the storage room. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. I grabbed my phone's flashlight and went to check. The room was empty except for boxes of windshield fluid and cleaning supplies. Then I noticed the back wall, a thin line of black liquid seeping through the concrete, pulsing like a heartbeat. I touched it without thinking. It was ice cold, and when I pulled my hand away, I could hear whispers. Not voices from outside, not inside my head either, somewhere in between. They said my name. The next morning, I told Gary again. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. "You touched the wall?" "Yeah. Why?" He rubbed his jaw. "That wall ain't a wall. They built over the old burial road. People used to travel through here before the highway existed. Most never made it. The ones who did, they built the gas station to cover what's underneath." I didn't believe him until I saw what was underneath. My final night there was a Friday. The store was quiet. No customers since midnight. Around 2:10 a.m., I heard the bell above the door. I looked up. Nobody there. Then I noticed on the floor, wet footprints again leading from the door straight down aisle 3. The same aisle from the camera incident. I followed them slowly. Each step made the air colder. At the end of the aisle, the floor was cracked open. Like something underneath had pushed up from below. I could see a sliver of darkness through the crack, not just shadow, but movement. Whispers grew louder, coming from beneath the floor, dozens of voices overlapping, repeating my name. The lights went out. I turned on my flashlight and saw faces pressed against the glass of the freezer doors. Dozens of them, men, women, even kids. Their mouths moved in perfect unison, whispering, "Stay with us, Evan." Then from behind me, a hand grabbed my shoulder. I spun around. It was Vern, the pale man from before. Only now his face was stretched, his skin thin as paper. Route 6. My name's Derek, and for 3 years I worked as a night security guard at a small 24-hour gas station on the outskirts of Flagstaff, Arizona. It wasn't much. 2 fuel pumps, 1 convenience store, and a dimly lit parking lot that seemed to stretch into nowhere. It was quiet work, easy money, until the night the man on camera appeared. And then, nothing was ever quiet again. When you work night shifts long enough, you learn the rhythm of the dark. Trucks come around 1 a.m. Cops sometimes stop for coffee around 3, and by 4 the world feels empty, like you're the last person alive. That's when you start hearing things. Not voices exactly, just the building breathing. But what happened at Miller's gas stop wasn't my imagination. I have footage to prove it. It started one Tuesday in November. Cold, windy, and quiet. The clerk, Sandra, had gone home early, food poisoning or something, so it was just me, the cameras, and the hum of the coolers. I sat in the little back office watching the monitors. 8 feeds in total, 4 inside, 4 outside. Around 2:46 a.m., something flickered on camera 6, the one facing pump 3. A man in a dark hoodie stood there, head lowered, motionless. At first, I thought he was fueling up, but he wasn't moving. I waited. 5 seconds, 10, 30. Still no movement. Then the lights flickered, just once. When they came back on, he was closer to the camera, right up against it, in fact. Face pressed to the lens, except the face wasn't clear. Just a blur, like the video couldn't focus. I switched to the front window view. Nobody there. I went outside, walked around the pumps with my flashlight. Empty lot. No footprints in the dust. I checked the recording again. Gone. No trace. The footage between 2:45 and 2:50 was static. I mentioned it to Sandra the next morning. She laughed nervously. "Oh, you saw him too?" My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" She leaned closer. "Pump 3, middle of the night. Man in a hoodie. Happens every few weeks. He never buys gas, never comes inside. Just stands there." I asked if she'd ever called the cops. She shook her head. "They don't come here after midnight." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Over the next few nights, I started keeping a log. November 10th, 2:46 a.m. Man at pump 3, hoodie, not moving. Gone after flicker. November 12th, 2:46 a.m. Same time, same place. Static again. November 14th, 2:46 a.m. He turned his head, looked directly into the camera. That last one scared me. When I froze the frame, I could make out something under the hood. Not a face, but a skull. Like the flesh had been erased pixel by pixel. I brought it up to my manager, Don, during the day shift meeting. He sighed. "Don't lose sleep over it. That station's old. Bad wiring, bad cameras. You'll get ghosts on screen sometimes, but I wasn't seeing ghosts. I was seeing a pattern. 2:46 a.m. every 2 nights. Pump 3. Always silent. Always the same man." I checked the old footage, going back months. Every appearance, same timestamp. But then I noticed something else. Each time he appeared, the clock on the wall behind me, visible in the corner of the feed, showed a different time. Sometimes 1:13, sometimes 3:22, never 2:46, like the man wasn't in my timeline at all. The following Friday, I decided to catch him in person. At 2:40, I left the monitors and went outside. The night was cold, silent, no wind. The desert air felt heavy, like something was pressing down. I stood beside pump 3 and waited. At exactly 2:46, the fluorescent lights above me flickered. Then, from the corner of my eye, movement. The reflection on the glass door showed someone standing behind me, tall, still, head down. I spun around, no one. But the reflection didn't move. I stepped closer to the glass, breath fogging. The figure in the reflection looked up, and for half a second I saw his face. Or what used to be a face. No eyes, no mouth, just smooth gray skin and faint ridges where features should have been. Then the lights snapped off. When I came to, I was inside the office, sitting in the chair, cameras still rolling. It was 3:17 a.m. I checked the recording. At 2:46, the lights went out. At 2:47, the camera panned on its own, slowly turning toward the office window. And there, in the reflection of the glass, was me, standing by pump 3. But my head was turned the wrong way. I tried to quit the next morning. Don didn't look surprised. He just said, "You lasted longer than most." Before I left, I asked him what he meant. He sighed and said, "Back in '98, a man disappeared from pump 3. Night clerk found his car running, hose still in the tank. Never found the body. Cameras went haywire that night, too. Ever since then, he comes back, trying to finish filling up, maybe, or looking for someone to take his place." I asked him what he meant by take his place. But Don just stared out the window and said, "You'll know if he picks you." That was 6 months ago. I moved 3 towns over, got a new job, no more graveyard shifts. But last week I stopped for gas on my way home from work. Different station, different town. As the pump clicked on, I glanced at the reflection in my car window. For just a second, a shadow stood behind me, hood up, head tilted, and on my dashboard clock, 2:46 a.m. If you ever stop at a gas station that feels too quiet and the air feels heavy and you see someone standing alone by pump 3, don't look at him. Don't even check the cameras. Because once you see him, he sees you too. And no matter where you go after that, he'll always find you at 2:46 a.m.